Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV, where we are at episode 636, and you got DanK here, your co-host, or your host. I don't have a co-host today, and you could be the co-host. Come on in and see us any Monday at 7:30 at the Community CTV 29 Studios behind Sheldon High School. Got some interesting stories and of course announcements. Main announcement we want to talk about is Mercy TV. Our friends from Salem that have been on the show quite a few times, come all the way down from Salem, and they have a show on Friday night up in Salem, and you can call in on their show. So I want to welcome everybody to call in. Put it on your phone and set the alarm. That's how I finally remembered to do it. But that's at 503-588-6444, and that's on Friday nights at 7 p.m. They got a half-hour show, very similar to ours, and call in and say hi. The first Emerald Empire 2017 organizational meeting is happening this coming Sunday, which is February 12th. It's at high noon, and that's at 3825 River Road. So if you have any interest in the Hempfest, try to be there. We really could use your help, and we need to come back from the city denying us our constitutional rights for not allowing us to use the park last year. So we've got to hit them this year and get back in there again and claim our rights. As you say, I like to say, your rights are like a muscle. If you don't exercise them, you'll lose them. So we need to exercise them. The Portland Normal has a new meeting day for their legislative committee. They meet once a month and talk about how they're going to work on the legislature and trying to get initiatives that that we need. Now, so now they're meeting on the second Monday of each month, and unfortunately, being a Monday and 120 miles away, I haven't been able to attend any of these meetings, but at some point I'd like to, just to see what's going on. But the last time I talked to the attorney in charge up there, I asked him what he was doing for the medical program and more importantly for the growers. And he said, oh, we're working on getting the lounges reopened, the smoking lounges which were shut down. So that kind of gives you an idea where Normal's coming from, and their big fight, for the cannabis issue is when they're going to help patients and growers by opening lounges. So not too sure about that, but anyway, so if you'd like to go to their meetings, that's where they are. And their next one is February 13th. That's at 8 p.m. and that's at 5427 Southeast 72nd. So you can get a hold of me through my email address, dankbagger@hotmail.com. If you need more information on that. And we have on February 14th through the 16th, the third annual Cannabis Collaboration Conference is going to be in Portland. The website is ccc-con-com. That's three C's, a dash, con, C-O-N, and then .com. Oregon Cannabis is changing daily. This is the only thing we can count on. For the businesses that have been part of this roller coaster ride, congrats. The second annual CCC 3.0 will include sessions on what is needed to navigate, survive, and thrive in the industry. The transition to recreation has been costly and filled with obstacles. Many have survived the changes, but many are struggling. But the admission is a little steep, so it's not for the faint of heart. An investor pass is $89. I don't know what that is for sure. The one-day pass is $149, and the two-day pass is $249. So this is what I call one of the pay-to-play events. It's not like the old days when we would have an event and volunteers could help out and come in, not have to pay, and they would let partners, people in that are friendly to the cause, but no, not these business ones. These business outfits want some serious money. So there you go, $149 for one day $249 for 2 days. So if you have inclined and got the money, go for it. Probably get some great information up there. So I wanted to talk about the, this was in the Oregon Cannabis Connection newspaper, written by Anthony Johnson. Now, Anthony Johnson, this is what the author of the article, or the publisher of Oregon Cannabis Connection wrote. I presume this, excuse me, that's what Keith Mansour, the editor and publisher of Oregon Cannabis Connection, wrote. Hat tip to the great Lelandberger of Oregon Cannabis Compliance Council, LLC, for promptly bringing the OLCC's report to my and other Oregon activates attention. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Anthony Johnson, who's actually wrote this in a minute, but let me get to the article here. This was posted in the Oregon Cannabis Connection newspaper.com, that's OCCnewspaper.com, dated the 27th of January this year, written by Anthony Johnson. During the 2-year process of developing the Oregon Measure 91 legalization law, I, along with many other advocates involved, were adamant about the fact that there could not be a per se THC driving under the influence of intoxicants provision included. The electrical process of the, the electoral success of the Washington I-502 measure that passed in our northern neighbor with a per se THC DUII law similar to the .08 alcohol standard put some pressure on Oregon activists to address driving, but these simply were not going to include an unscientific per se THC DUII law in our marijuana legalization initiative. Thankfully, Oregon voters wisely passed cannabis legalization with over 56% of the vote, understanding that a per se THC DUII law was not needed. But that doesn't mean that we are out of the woods. Unfortunately, the Oregon legislature has passed some provisions contrary to the intent of Measure 91. Those tragically, the weakening of the state's existing medical marijuana program against the wishes of the M91 campaign team, thus raising legitimate fears that a per se THC law could be passed. A new report from the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, the OLCC, the agency regulating the state's commercial cannabis and alcohol systems, should put to rest any discussion about the need for a per se THC driving standard. As tasked by state law, the OLCC just issued a report to the Oregon legislature regarding the issue of driving and cannabis consumption, and the regulatory agency wisely recommends against a per se DUII law from the OLCC's DUII legislative report. The body of evidence that does exist indicates that while attitudes towards driving after marijuana use are considerably more relaxed than in the case of alcohol, the risk of crashes while driving under the influence of THC is lower than drunk driving. Little evidence exists to compel a scientific change in status quo policy or institute a per se intoxication standard for THC. Instead, recommendations in this report aim to find avenues to change the attitudes towards THC and driving among youth, increases the quality and availability of data, and strengthen the body of research. While I don't agree with every regulatory decision of the OLCC, I have found the agency very reasonable on cannabis issues, and their DUII report is in line with their sensible thinking. The regulatory body examined the available evidence and came away with conclusions that any pragmatic person could agree with an unscientific per se THC DUII law is not needed. But we want to develop ways to best everyone, especially minors, about the consequences of driving under the influence of marijuana. The OLCC refusing to recommend a per se THC DUII law mimics the testimony of Evan Sethler, Sergeant with the Oregon State Police and statewide coordinator of Oregon's Drug Evaluation and Classification Program. Sergeant Sethler was confident that existing drug recognition techniques were adequate and not per se THC DUII law was needed. hopefully this ends the Per Se THC DUII issue discussion in Oregon and helps other states avoid the mistake of implementing an unscientific Per Se THC DUII law as well. I resume this was, so anyway, that's the long and the short of it. So still, as they mentioned, the DRE, drug recognition, I've got to do some more story on that in the near future to upgrade everybody on what the DRE is. A drug recognition expert. It's a specially certified officer that can supposedly, with his training, can look at you and determine whether you're probably impaired or not, and order you to take a drug test if possible. If that's, to take a drug test. So a P test. So anyway, but that was written by Anthony Johnson, and Anthony Johnson was worked at the major person behind the Metro 91, the legalization initiative. However, I always have thought very highly of Anthony Johnson. But anyway, he as soon as Measure 91 was passed, well, long before he became, he ended up taking started working with the commercial industry, and even though he talks a good line and looks out, but essentially the medical marijuana program is in big trouble. People aren't renewing cards because they can't find growers, and the reason they can't find growers is because the state has implemented growing fees on growers, and growers either can't or don't want to pay it, and so therefore patients are having more and more trouble finding people to grow for them, and that's the direct result of our, as I like to say, our uninformed, biased, prejudiced legislature, who are in session right now, by the way. And I missed the rally in Salem today. I wasn't able to get up there, but I'm hoping the turnout was pretty good, and I'll be be talking about that in the future to update you on how that was going, how that went. They had a lot of pretty good organization, mainly on Facebook, and they were looking for people to go in and speak to legislatures while the rally was going on. It was raining all day, so it seemed like it might have been pretty miserable up there. I'm not sure how it was exactly there, but from the film I did see, a little bit of film I did see, it looked like they were pretty well prepared with a canopy and all. And I've been to many rallies up in Salem, in front of the legislature, in front of the state capitol, and we've always had a pretty good time, fairly good success. The biggest problem is we don't have enough turnout. We need to show numbers, and when you hear about rallies, I really encourage people to participate. I'm saying that, and I didn't make the one in Salem, but but anyway, it really is important. They need to see our numbers, and of course, write to your legislators and as we like to say, your Congress critters. And even my own, we have two, one state senator, Lee Byer, which is, I don't think much of him personally, and then we have John Lively, who I didn't used to think much of, but actually he's doing pretty well. He actually listens, and I believe he does care for patients, and so we do have a fairly good representative in John Lively. So anyway, they're in session, so listen up, and I'll be bringing you updates as we proceed in future shows. But anyway, we've got to take a break right now, and when I come back, we're going to do a couple more stories of trying to get some information out there on the cannabis issue and where we're at in this pseudo-legalization, as I like to call it. Yes, it's legal, but there's still penalties involved. So we'll talk more later. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the second half of the Eugene Cannabis TV, episode 336, and we've got well, I guess you call this an opinion piece. This is written by Pioneer Pete Gendron. He's a good friend of ours and a good friend of the cannabis issue itself. This was in the Oregon Cannabis newspaper again, and this was dated well, I say last year now. That was in December, actually Christmas Day, 2016. OHA and the OLCC look like ducks and the beavers. He starts out by saying, "I'm not a jock. I only know enough about sports to be able to converse with the locals when I'm in town. I don't have a team. I don't know who's the hottest player right now, so it may be surprising to read the next sentence. Oregon's marijuana policy right now looks exactly like the ducks and the beavers sessions." That's right. For those of you similarly in your own world of cannabis, let me explain. The ducks and beavers start out the year with high hopes, just like our new regulatory structure. Our college football teams began the year with a solid foundation, just like our marijuana programs. Our favored universities were projected to go far and do well, just like the evolving regulations that came from the last two legislative sessions. We had star players and famous faces who are here to get the job done, a big job, in the face of unrelenting opposition. We had overwhelming confidence from the people we were playing for. Then the season ended in not just one, but a series of crushing defeats and upsets that nobody predicted. For the football fans, it could be blamed on injuries or a type of death by chance. It can be blamed on coaching or coordination. All I know for sure is the Ducks and the Beaver fans usually argue about which team is better, and this year they're arguing about which team is worse. Even the Civil War game was a disaster. No tailgate parties here, and no real winner either. So why the sports analogy from a guy who admittedly can't name a coach or quarterback? Because that's what the state has done to our marijuana programs. Just like our teams, there's plenty of blame to go around. But I'm going to assign blame equally for damage done to our teams, medical and recreational. The State Department of Justice shoulders the lion's share of the burden. For a bunch of people who had the hands-off approach of Measure 67 and the medical program for 17 years, they came in like a freshman coach who knows it all and is fixing things for our benefit or make us better. White-eyed outsiders who see the world one way while our team lives a life they have never experienced and solve problems that aren't there. But there's plenty of debate about who else may be at fault. Let's look at the OLCC. A tax grab is one thing, designing plays for the benefit of the state, their team sponsor, which they knew would get players injured, sidelined, or even out for the season. That was completely unexpected. In football, it is against the rules to act in a manner that is deliberately designed to injure the competition. Sure, injuries happen, but not out of malice. Apparently, the OLCC didn't get the memo. But they're a bunch of bureaucrats. They regulate a given item, in this case, marijuana, until it doesn't sell anymore. Then they consider their job done. And speaking of bureaucrats, let's not forget the OHA role in all this. Although Measure 91 said in 3 places that adult use regulation was not to affect our long-standing medical program, the OHA happily watched as the legislature steamrolled patients and essentially pushed them to the OLCC. If we call the OMMP the Ducks and the OLCC the Beavers, it's clear who the victor was in this Civil War game. But why? Why did the medical team coach throw the game at the cost of our patients' access? The OHA is run and managed by people who are openly hostile to the OMMP and do not believe marijuana is medication, and who appoint subordinates who are incompetent and do not care about doing their jobs. There, I said it. But why did coach throw the game? Because the team owner, the legislature, told her so. I told her too. Not all of our legislators believe the OMMP is effective. It is. Beneficial to public health and safety. It is. And good for the Oregon bottom line budget. It is. But they do have another reason: money. The biggest disaster in the last legislative session was our Oregon representatives and senators voting against the will of the people as expressed in Measure 91 and against the interests of Oregonians by allowing out-of-state money to remove the residency requirements for new cannabis businesses. This season was a sad one for Oregon, both in football and cannabis law. We lost, all of us, no matter which team you support. I could impart more bad analogies on what the state wants to do with hemp, or the fact that our DOJ, Department of Justice, is representing the feds, not Oregonians, but that's another article. So let's focus on having the legislatures do what the Ducks did. Remove an underperforming coach and go find some players who will really work for our team. Pioneer Pete is not a sports fan and doesn't play one on TV. So definitely appreciate that, Peter. That was well said and well written, and makes some great points. That's always been a real contention of mine, is Measure 91 stated 3 times in that initiative that it was not to affect the Oregon, the legalization was not supposed to affect the medical marijuana program, and it's then just the opposite. The state has gone completely going after the money, and their greed shows, and their disregard for medical patients is also showing, which is nothing new. So anyway, situation normal, and that's why we had to, or I say we, but anyway, that's why the fight went on in Portland today at the rally. Another thing I want to do real quick, this is that Freedom Leaf. We just got the new Freedom Leaf in, and it's celebrating Bob Marley. We've got an article here. We talked about, one of the things about legalization they talked about was about how it could be bad on teens, and how teens could be easier for teens to get cannabis, and it would just be a disaster. Well, this is an article again in the Freedom Leaf, the current issue of the Freedom Leaf magazine, and titled "Teen Cannabis Lowest Since the 90s." Prohibitionists often argue that legalization sends the wrong message to young people, but the latest Monitoring the Future survey conducted by the National Institutes of Health acknowledges the continued decline of teen use of cannabis despite legalization in 4 states since 2012. Marijuana, the most widely used of the illicit drugs, dropped sharply in 2006 in use among 8th graders to 9.4%, or about 1 in every 11, indicating any use in the past 12 months, the survey reports. Use also declined among 10th graders as well, to 24%, or about 1 in every 4 10th graders. The annual prevalence of marijuana use, referring to the percentage of using any marijuana in the prior 12 months, has been declining gradually among 8th graders since 2010, and more sharply among 10th graders since 2013. Among 12th graders, however, the prevalence of marijuana use is higher, 36%, and has held steady since 2011. The numbers confounded NIDA Director Dr. Nora Volkow, who said in December, "I don't have an explanation. That is somewhat surprising." The NIDA had predicted that accessibility and use would increase based on the changes of legalization and culture of the United States, as well as decreasing perceptions among teenagers that marijuana was harmful. But the data says otherwise. So researchers from the University of Michigan have been conducting the Monitoring the Future survey for the last 42 years. More than 45,000 students at 380 schools were interviewed for the latest survey, which concluded that drug, alcohol, and tobacco use among teens are the lowest since the 1990s. So poof, there goes another theory that didn't come about, pro-cannabis. So, and this is in Reuters.com, and written by Mayan Labelle, dated February 5th, titled "Israel Takes Step Toward Allowing Export of Medical Marijuana." An Israeli government committee gave an initial nod on Sunday for the export of medical marijuana to what could be a windfall for companies in Israel, widely regarded as a leader in research in the field. A government statement announcing the vote said it would take months for the legislature to make its way through Parliament. In the United States, 28 states have legalized marijuana for medical use, and since 2012, Colorado, Alaska, California, Maine, Massachusetts, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington, D.C. have also approved marijuana for recreational use. The market there, by some estimates, will reach $50 billion over the next decade. Israel is widely regarded as one of the world leaders in medical marijuana research, even though the local market is small. Only 23,000 people have health minister permits to purchase medical cannabis from 9 licensed suppliers, creating a market of $15 million to $20 million at most. Sean Kay, CEO of ICANN, a private cannabis research hub in Israel, said there are about 50 Israel medical marijuana companies active in many aspects of the industry, from agriculture to delivery devices such as inhalers. Kay estimated the international investments in Israel companies reached about $100 million in 2016. Last month, Israel moved towards decriminalizing small-scale personal use of marijuana, and authorities are supportive of research. Health Minister Yaakov Litzman supports medical cannabis usage and has introduced steps to ease its prescription and sale. Israel growers work together with scientific institutions in clinic trials and development of strains that treat a variety of illnesses and disorders. So that's good news and exciting. I remember very well doing a story quite a few years ago how Israel was actually trying cannabis for veterans suffering from PTSD. So they've been on the forefront of this issue, and glad to see it. So it's definitely going to be a help for all future present and future patients. So anyway, again, we look for guests to come on in and see us any Monday night at 7:30. Come on to the studios behind Children High School and come on by and say hi. That's HI, of course. And I'll be here and sure to see you. So thanks for being here tonight. We'll talk to you later.